be working. It is the first video of 2026, and this is, I think, number 800, video 800 on our channel. I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and welcome to 2026. I am the English Fluency Guide and here to help you, and I want to begin 2026 with an interesting lesson. Share two quick stories, and we'll see, maybe this will not even be that long of a video. Of course, I always say that, and then people have lots of questions, and then we go for longer than I expect, but we'll see. So anyway, welcome to the new year, and we'll just get right into it. I will keep my eye on chat as usual. If you do have questions, let me know. But this video is a different kind of thing, really. It's more about reminding people something they probably forget, although maybe they have a lot of social pressure to speak. But it's your choice, really, to put pressure on yourself or to not, and feel sure about your words before you use them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we get started, but hopefully everybody is enjoying their new year. Renee, nice to see you there. Greetings from Brazil. So two quick stories just to start the video. I received some interesting comments. This was actually on the same video a few days ago. And it was very interesting because these were two different people commenting, and they had the exact opposite idea about what they should do. And so one of the comments was saying, you have to speak if you want to get fluent, and who wants to practice speaking with me? And I think this is certainly a valid thing. It's true that you can certainly speak, and if you're looking for a speaking practice partner in order to improve your fluency, you certainly can do that. But interestingly, there was another comment about the same time on the same video. It was another learner talking about how they were frustrated because they naturally have this desire to want to feel sure about their words first. And they feel a lot of pressure from people that you have to speak if you want to get fluent. And they were thinking, you know, I really should be able to feel confident about my words before I use them, you know, actually feeling sure that I will use them correctly. And so I wanted to share another quick story, but I thought it was interesting that both of these comments were the last things I'm getting, or I guess you could say the first things also at the start of the new year, but they really show these two different ways of thinking about language learning. And a lot of people just don't know it's possible to feel sure about your words before you speak. So I wanted to give a quick story about that. So this was at the end of last year, 2025. This was right before Christmas, I think, and excuse me, I was in the living room of my home. My wife and my two kids were there, and my mother-in-law was there as well. My mother-in-law is Japanese. My wife is Japanese also, not surprisingly. But my mother-in-law's English is not very good. She can't speak very well, and she you know, feels nervous and has lots of questions about the language, as many people do. My wife is much better, and she speaks very well, although she would also like to improve her fluency. Anyway, so we're getting my kids ready for school. This is, I think, maybe 2 or 3 days before Christmas, like the last day of school. And my mother-in-law asked, is it okay to use the word feed when talking about giving food, like we're trying to put clothes on them and give them some breakfast, and everybody's working. It's almost like people, a pit crew. Maybe you know this term here, the pit crew. In those car races where you have the car driving around the track, and then they have a group of people waiting to help fix the car if there's an issue or something like that. And so all these people come together and work on the car at the same time very quickly. So this is what we were trying to do. We were trying to put some clothes on them and feed them. So my mother-in-law asks, is it okay to use the word feed when we're talking about feeding the kids? like to give them food? And I said yes. And so my wife was there also, and because my wife was there, I wanted to extend the lesson a little bit. But you'll notice in this situation first, my mother-in-law thought about using a word, talking about feed, like we need to feed the kids. So sometimes she's just trying to use English a little bit, which is great. And she was unsure about using the word. So in this situation, she felt fine asking me, is this a correct way to use the language? But often a lot of people, when they're in a situation like that, they feel unsure about saying something like a word or a phrase, or they don't know about the pronunciation of a word, or if the phrase they want to say is appropriate for a situation. So lots of different questions people have, but they can't get them answered because they would feel nervous about asking somebody, or it's just not the right time or whatever. But a lot of people have this same kind of experience. So in this case, she just asked me because she feels comfortable asking me. So in this situation, she was happy to ask me, and I was happy to respond and tell her, yes, you can say that. But I continued, I said, you can also feed, you can feed a ticket. So feed a ticket into a machine at the train station. Or, let's see, what else was I saying? I was saying you can feed paper into a printer. So if we have like a regular computer printer, I'm not going to draw this very well, but we're going to put pieces of paper in the back of it. This is probably my best, my worst drawing ever of trying to guess what this is. But imagine, you have a printer here, the paper goes in the back. We feed the paper into the machine. And so as you get these different uses of feed, we, number one, understand the word better, but we also make the word more valuable because we didn't learn anything new other than different ways of using the same word. So the word itself became more usable. Now we understand, we can use it for talking about feeding a ticket into something or feeding paper into a machine, something like that. And this is it's a pretty interesting thing when you get that. And the important thing was you can get this idea, or in this this particular lesson here, before you speak. And so what I'm doing, sharing this story with you, is just demonstrating that you don't have to just try using the word or repeating the word again and again. I'm going to practice the word by saying feed, feed, feed. And I'll be talking about this in chapter 7, which I'm still working on. I spent a lot of time actually working on that. It's not really a complicated chapter, but there are a lot of ideas that I need to make sure I order in the right way. But I think people will really enjoy reading it. If you don't have the book already, you can click on the link in the description below this video to get The Strangest Fluency Secret. But this idea here is really talking about how you have permission to actually feel certain about your words before you speak. You don't have to force yourself if you don't feel comfortable about speaking. You can feel sure first and then start using your words. So of course, you might not feel 100% perfectly certain, but that's not really the point. It's really to get you much closer to feeling sure about your words before you speak, rather than having this wide jump, what I call the preparation gap between learning and speaking. So if you spend a lot of time learning, but then when you speak, it feels like a completely different environment, you feel a lot of pressure to speak, and you don't feel comfortable using a lot of your words, it means you're not actually getting that preparation before you speak. So instead of trying to force yourself to do that, we can feel sure first and then make that distance between the learning phase and the speaking phase a lot closer, if not overlapping. So anyway, this idea of feeding, now, if you did not know this already, you should feel more sure about using the word. You should understand it better. And we think about feeding something like, I'm going to feed this marker into the cap here, like that. So the idea is more about taking something and delicately putting it into a space where maybe there's not a lot of space for it. just like I would put a ticket into a ticket machine. There's not a lot of space for that, or I'm going to put a mail, like a letter or something, into a mailbox. So I've got my mailbox slot over here. Here's the mailbox, and I've got a letter. There's not a lot of space here, so you can say, something like insert or put in, or you can say feed. So I'm going to feed a letter into this mailbox slot over here, the slot. So this little small area. So we want to make sure we don't put mail that's too big into it. That's why the slot is like this. And so we have to delicately, carefully do that, just like you're putting food into somebody's mouth. You don't want to just, poke their eye or something. You want to get the food delicately and carefully into that person's mouth. That's why we would not fit or try to feed a coat into a closet, because we've got a lot of space. If you think about a closet like this, pretty big, and maybe a coat is only taking up this much space. We don't feed a coat into a closet, we just put it in. But again, when you have a small thing going into a small space, or something that's just big enough for it to fit in there, that's where you would feed something in, okay? Interestingly, we actually saw a few days ago, there was a Japanese show. It's Pitagora Switchy. It's just a kind of showing mechanical things and stuff like that. It's just a children's show. But they showed a machine called a part feeder. And I thought that was pretty interesting that word appeared again, and this is that naturally varied review, like we're trying to show different examples of something that really help you understand it. So the Japanese term was a feeder, but they actually used the English, so part, like a part feeder. Again, to put little screws or something like that into a little machine. So we're trying to feed something like that. But again, when you learn these examples, you realize that feed is not just about food specifically, it's about that particular activity. But again, the important thing is that we're learning this before we speak. So it just proves that you don't need to force yourself to speak in order to get fluent. You can do that if you want to, but don't feel pressured to do that if you don't want to. You really can get good examples, and it is a lot easier to learn than most people think, and you can feel a lot more prepared when you get into conversations. All right, so as I promised, just a very quick lesson today. We'll see if anybody has any questions, but I will go back and answer those. But hopefully this makes sense. And it's an idea I'd really like you to remember, probably the most important idea for 2026, but really any year, because I've been teaching this same way for over 20 years now. And even on YouTube, over 15 years. Crazy. 15 years on YouTube, and basically doing the same thing, just showing people that if you feel sure about your words first, then you can actually express yourself. So you don't have to practice the typical way and try to put lots of pressure on yourself. It is easy to get the right examples and feel more sure. So George says, Happy New Year. Benedict says, hi from Ghana. And let's see here. We've got Misaki Jimenez. Hello there. I have a cold and I hate it. Long time no see. Oh no. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. All right, let's see. Hello. I'd like to thank you for the amazing lessons. I'm Patrick Muniz, English coordinator in Cruz, Brazil. English coordinator. Oh, very nice. In Cruz, Brazil. Keep teaching. Happy New Year. Happy New Year for you. Okay, thanks a lot. It's my pleasure. Well, look at that. We've got very few questions, actually no questions today, but I'm glad to hear people are enjoying. So we'll see. I'll give people another minute or two to see if you have any particular questions, because again, the whole point here is whether you get help from someone like me or not, you can feel sure about your words first, and you can actually develop your fluency in this way just by feeling more sure. And then when you get into a conversation, the words will come out much more easily. And here, again, I really like this example because it shows you how we're taking a word, we're understanding it better, and actually seeing how it becomes more useful when you understand the core meaning of a word in this way. Now, every word doesn't work that way, but the point is, if we're not just trying to repeat this, we're not trying to learn like when people typically get example sentences like I feed the birds, or I'm feeding some children, or I'm doing whatever, they get the same kind of example here, but as soon as you get a different one, and so this is what I'm doing when I'm guiding people with particular variation, this naturally varied review for how the example works. But if you spend just a little bit of time with the word, you will remember it more easily. You will feel more sure about using it. The word becomes more useful to you because you have like additional context in which you can use it, or you just feel more confident about it in general because you actually understand what exactly it means. And again, look at this. You've seen all these examples in English as well. So you're learning to understand it the same way a native English speaker would. And that's what allows you to speak. All right, Rakesh, nice to see you there. Elithim, pardon me, look like, yeah, quite a few people from Brazil. Everaldo says, hello from Brazil. Pardon me if I'm mispronouncing any of these things because it's all like one long username here. Let's see. In Chrono Ghost, Drew, how do natives give directions to someone asking for a direction, like go straight and then turn left, etc., like the natural way of answering? I was asked and freezing because I didn't have the words. Well, I guess it depends on what you're talking about. Usually when you're learning these things in an English classroom, they will give you some kind of map, and here's the post office and here's the bank and, things like that. And so the person is over here and it's like, okay, walk 2 blocks and then turn left or whatever. It's interesting, like now people just say, look at Google. Like people don't often give each other directions like that, but you don't have to think about this as one way to do it. It's not like only one proper way, because I could ask 10 different native speakers how to do something and they would give me 10 different, maybe related, but not exactly the same answers. And so depending on the situation, like how close I am, I could just say, oh, it's right over there. Like if I can see it and I'm trying to give the simplest directions as long as the person would reach their destination, then that would be fine. But I don't have to be very specific. Like if I'm looking at it, I can see maybe the person is kind of walking around a general area. Like a good example would be if I'm at a government office and there are a bunch of different departments there. Like I was at actually a government office a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just like, okay, how do I get to wherever? And so the person is like, oh, like go to the 3rd floor, and it's like right above us or whatever. So we know, okay, it's generally in that area, and maybe I can ask someone else if I still need help. But some people could actually use a map if you have one. But if you're just trying to give general directions, or you're trying to say maybe you can't see something, but it's more like further away, you could be telling them, take a train to do this, and then you have to get off at this station. You're looking for the specific waypoints, so waypoint. So a waypoint is like, here's a specific location where I want you to go here and then, change what you're saying or whatever, or like now I want you to change this direction. And so it kind of depends on the particular situation. But we want to be as simple as possible, but typically it's not like a classroom lesson where we're like, okay, first walk to the end of this block and then turn right and then walk 2 blocks and then turn left or whatever. Like, I don't know. That situation is just increasingly rare because, again, people just have software and map like applications and things like that they can use. But again, you can be general about how you do that. Like it's over there, or it's next to this thing, or something like that. But yeah, it depends on the specific directions and how far away you are. But like if I'm telling people how to get to my house from another city or something like that, then I'm maybe giving them slightly different or more detailed directions. It just depends on the situation. But if you watch some people giving directions on YouTube, like looking for travelers getting directions, don't look for a YouTube English lesson about this. Just look for people actually doing this. Actually, in Fluent for Life, we have, like, we're talking about that, like people giving directions and stuff. But it's more about how natives would would say this naturally. But you can find examples of this on YouTube. All right, let's see what else we miss here. Rakesh from India, and H says, your mother-in-law might have asked you about the word feed because Japanese use different words when you feed children or animals. They use tabesaseru for children or esa, yeah. So like, I mean, but I don't think my mother wasn't really worried about that. Like, I think, and I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but yeah, she knew, like, and I know she has heard examples of feeding goats or feeding children or whatever, but yeah, so it's possible that maybe she was asking that, but the point more is the uncertainty about it. So it doesn't really matter what the uncertainty is. You could be uncertain because you think it can't be used, or you're uncertain about the pronunciation, or you're uncertain because a translation in your native language makes you think a different way about using the language. All of those things are possible, but the core for all of that is the uncertainty itself. And if you get the answer you need, then you can feel sure about using it. And so that's the whole point of this idea of feeling sure first, and then actually, okay, now I can use the language or whatever it is I'm trying to say. But that's the idea. So you don't have to put pressure on yourself to do this before you speak. But yeah, so that's as a good thought about why they might be specifically unsure, especially with the Japanese example. Maria says, good morning, Drew. A good evening in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Look at that. Brazil is just representing today. Drew says, miss this, guys. Hi, how are you doing? I'm doing all right. Krim says, hello. What is a better way to show incorrect spelling? A better way to show incorrect spelling? What do you mean by that? Like a better way to show incorrect? Like to tell people that their spelling is incorrect? Or you're trying to, or do you mean like how to correct your spelling? Because a better way to show incorrect spelling, if that's what you mean, like that's saying like if I spell feed like this, with 3 E's, it's like E, feed or something. If I do that and I'm typing in a document, I will get usually some kind of underline like this. It's like, oh, okay, you spelled that incorrectly. So it's telling me it's incorrect, if that's what you mean. But if you're talking about how to actually improve your spelling, I created an app called Frederick, which you can also learn about by clicking on the link in the description below this video. But one of the things that Frederick will teach you to do is how to spell words correctly. And part of that is learning the sound and spelling rules of the language. Look at that, got a new eraser. Finally sticks up on the whiteboard here. But when you're learning to spell things, most of the language, so most of the English language, has spelling rules that actually make sense. So I know sometimes it seems like a crazy language. We have words that don't make sense, or silent letters, or things borrowed from other languages like Japanese or French or German or whatever. But if you want to learn how to spell things correctly, I'll just put the name of the app, Frederick. So you can click on the link in the description below this video to get that. But basically what the app does is it allows you to teach yourself the sound and spelling rules of English the same way natives learn. And so what you're doing is comparing things like C-A-T versus C-A-T-E, for example. And so here we're learning how to spell. When we have the E over here, the sound of the word changes, and this letter sound changes. But you don't try to memorize a rule. A teacher isn't telling you this. You discover these rules on your own. And because you discover them, you feel like, now I own this rule. I understand it. I figured this out on my own. So we've got cat and then Kate. Cat and Kate. And so when you understand that, like this E over here changes the sound of that letter. So we actually don't say this last letter here. The E is just here to change that letter sound. So if that's what you're asking about, I don't know. It's not quite clear from your comment, but there are 2 answers for you. All right, let's see if we have Crimson, I just beginner in English. I hope to improve my English skills with you. If you are actually a beginner, you can use Frederick as well. So it will teach you the rules of the language. It will teach you the sounds, the spelling, all of that, even grammar and lots of vocabulary. There are over 2,000 words and sentences in the app, but you can discover all of this yourself and actually teach yourself the language. So if you feel like you are a beginner or you make some beginner mistakes, sometimes the app will really correct that for you. But you can click on the link in the description below to do that. I also have a good beginning English grammar playlist here on YouTube, which helps you understand these things all in English the same way a native would learn them. And then Misaki again, are there teachers that use this same method to teach Japanese? Have you come across with one in your Japanese learning journey? No, I have not. I saw one guy on YouTube randomly teaching Chinese this way. Like I could tell like he understood how to teach and help people understand this way of learning. But no, I frustratingly have not. And so I'm still teaching myself Japanese this way. But again, it is possible to do. It's just slower because if you're teaching yourself, like I wouldn't think naturally in Japanese, like let's say this is a Japanese example. It could be for any language, but you learn a word like esa o yaru, like to give food to an animal or something like that. And it's like, is there anything else I can use that for? Those are the kinds of questions that you should be asking. And you can get help from ChatGPT or just looking those things up on your own if you want to. Obviously, it's more work if you don't have someone to help you do it, which is why it's more frustrating, but it is possible to do. And so one of the things I talk about in my book is that this actually trains your way of thinking, where you start asking more questions to build these connections, even if you don't have someone there to help you. So if you learn a word like feed, you should be thinking, I wonder where else we could use this. So I made another video a while back about, it was like 5 laws or something like that. I forget the exact title, but if you watch that video, it's talking about this same idea of how we can train our brains to ask these kinds of questions so that you can get those answers even if you don't have a native or a teacher to help you with things. But yeah, it's nice if there is if there's a person who can actually do it. So that's why I do it in English for other people. That's how I can get them fluent faster, because they don't have to struggle with trying to figure these things out on their own. I can just tell them or set up basically the aha moments that let them understand the vocabulary very easily. But yeah, it would be nice if I had something like that for Japanese. So there could potentially be somebody, I don't know, I've not found anybody. I don't really spend much time watching like English or Japanese lessons on YouTube. I haven't really found anybody. Like pretty much most things are it's just kind of grammar point memorization, where like here's a grammar point, but very few insight driven learning where you actually feel like, oh, I figured something out. And so most of it is kind of discoveries that I make from watching people do stuff, but it was an accidental discovery. Like I kind of noticed something, they weren't intending to teach that. So hopefully more people figure that out. My book is for teachers as well who want to know how to teach better, or at least teach in this way, where you're trying to guide people to have these realizations about the language. And again, Frederick is the same thing. So I think probably in the future, as more people begin teaching this way, more people will adopt this approach. And that's part of the reason I'm writing the book, because I'd like more people to be able to have this. So yeah, we'll see. But it would be great. If you find anybody, let me know. But if your name is Misaki Jimenez and maybe you like anime or something, you're studying Japanese. And then we got Gringo over here. I wish everyone was speak that fluent and clear like you. Yes, and so this is a common comment I get on videos, and I'm intentionally speaking more slowly, more clearly, not using a bunch of difficult idioms or movie quotes or slang or things like that that you might not be prepared for. That's the kind of thing that we teach in steps to make sure you understand it well. That's what we do in Fluent for Life. But in these videos, I really want to make people just very clear about using the language. So here we're taking like a specific idea or vocabulary or something and making sure it's clear, because when you feel sure about using it, then we can move on to refinement. So that's where we're learning, okay, now that you understand these uses of feed, we can hear some different and more interesting uses or other things like that, or hearing different people pronounce it or say it quickly, or how the word would blend together with something else, But yeah, those are all interesting things that happen as you go through and learn the language this way. So correct mistakes from students at classes. Sorry, I typed in a cell phone. So if you're, and no need to worry about that, I understand. So if you're talking about correcting mistakes versus getting students to not keep making the same mistake, if that's what you mean. So often a lot of learning is just, hey, you have this error, here is the correct one over here. But getting a correction doesn't necessarily help you improve, because it often doesn't give you any insight into why you made the mistake. And this actually happened with my younger daughter about a week ago, where she was taking, so she is Japanese, half, I don't know, white or whatever you want to call me. So she's in regular Japanese school, and her spoken Japanese is fine. But she was taking some kind of test where she had to write something, and she made an interesting mistake in the Japanese. And it was kind of interesting how she did that. I don't even remember the exact example, but I understood why she would make that mistake. And so I was kind of talking with my wife about that afterwards. And I didn't talk with my daughter about the example. It was just a test she got back. But when you look at something like that, you want to make sure people understand why stuff works the way it does, especially adults. But when you're trying to teach people, if you can, as a teacher, you want to give them the opportunity to discover things themselves. And so if you're saying, like, here's one word and here's another word and here's another, and there's a pattern developing with these, then people feel more confident that you show them an additional word. Now that pattern is being followed here, or I can understand something. Or if a pattern is being broken, whatever. But again, part of this is not like the job of the teacher to just tell them or just to correct them, but to guide them and show them how. Maybe like for a spelling thing, this is, again, usually teaching people about patterns more than anything else. But like this is the basic idea. But yeah, so like in my world, for what I do, I want to help people discover things themselves as much as possible, so that if I'm actually working with someone, I can spend more time talking with them or whatever. And I don't really offer personal like classes or anything like that, but it's the same thing I do with my own kids. So if I'm talking with them and teaching them a particular thing, like I was teaching my older daughter the word deduce. So she's interested in mystery stuff, and so we were learning about logic puzzles and deduction and things like that. And so we were covering those words. But I wanted to talk with her about that and make sure she understood that. And so I used the word again and again a few days later, but in different contexts, to help her understand that, and she understands it and can use it well now. But most of that is just me guiding people to have those realizations, and then you can start using the language and deepening the understanding. That's really the goal for me of being the teacher. Bridget, nice to see you there. Happy New Year. Drew, do you know of any methods on how to help the mind drift whilst reading? Like to stop the mind, stop the mind from drifting? I guess it depends on what you're reading. But like, does that happen with everything you read, or just some things? Or are you talking about reading like English material or something like that, because if you enjoy a novel or something like that, the story is interesting, you're less likely to do that. But the mind it's always thinking about something else. Even right now, people watching this video, maybe they naturally think about what they want to eat for lunch or dinner, or they have laundry, or where they're going to go for vacation or whatever. People's minds are always floating around doing all kinds of stuff. But the best thing is try to keep it short and then look for material that's interesting for you. Because if you don't get it, or it's too difficult or whatever, build your level up in that way. That way you can feel more sure about maybe reading or whatever the particular thing is. But yeah, if you don't have that problem with reading some interesting magazine article, but you do have that problem with, I don't know, reading English material or something, try to just give yourself a short section of it to focus on, then feel good that you finished that section. You can, even if you have a one sentence or a couple of words or whatever, you can build that ability to continue by yourself. Just, hey, I finished one sentence. Even one sentence by itself can be a good reason to congratulate yourself if you were focusing on that. Like for me, my spoken Japanese is way better than my reading ability. So my ability is the opposite for a lot of learners. And so my reading, I don't know if I have dyslexia for reading Japanese, but my ability to read is still quite slow. I'm pretty good, but, and this isn't about not knowing kanji. It's like even hiragana or katakana, it takes me a while to process it for some reason. I don't know why that is, even if I practice it. But in those cases, I try to give myself something short to focus on, and then I can feel good about that, and then try to make that longer and longer. Let's see. Ovlog says, hi, Drew. I'm a native Uzbek, but I am not really fluent, and I really try to stuck and search for words to explain my ideas. And in English, the same. Is it really about I do not even have a language fluently? Well, that's interesting. I mean, like you have trouble explaining what exactly, because and this is a common problem for people pretty much for anything in life, where people think that they have a bigger problem than they do. So. And it's just, often this is true because people try to take more time explaining or thinking about a problem, and they will make the problem like much bigger than it actually is. And so they will think, like, for example, Drew, I'm not fluent. So they will say something like that, like, I'm not fluent. So I'm not fluent. And that's this is a really big problem for people. But what's actually happening is you are fluent in some pieces of things. So there are some things you can say and maybe others that you cannot say. Or it's the same thing with pronunciation. So instead of I'm not fluent, you say my accent is bad or whatever. So people make a very broad statement about something about themselves that isn't actually true, but it's just an easier, faster way to express it. But unfortunately, it kind of puts more pressure on you than you need to. So I would imagine if you were speaking about, whatever, there's some things you can speak fluently about in your native language or whatever, and other things you cannot. And so if you take a moment and look at that, you would probably see that that's true. And you can take these things and expand them or use that information to talk about related things or something like that. But things like that, I would guess that you probably can speak, in your native language about whatever. But yeah, I think you understood the question. Yeah, hopefully I understood that. If not, let me know. But again, generally when people talk about a problem, like people will say, like teenagers will say, "Oh no, my life is over." And the parent says, "What do you mean your life is over?" And they say, "Well, I did badly on this one test." And it's just like, okay, so it's not your life is over, it's this one thing over here. So we try to put that into perspective to help you feel more confident that there is a specific issue that we can fix. And usually there is. And so if you're thinking like, I'm not actually fluent, typically the people watching my videos can say some things at least, even if they're basic. And it's more about learning, like for what I teach, imagine there's something you can say. There is a point where you could not say it, and now you can. So when you hit this point, you've basically become fluent. You're able to use the word. And I don't really care so much about the word fluency. It's just, can you use the vocabulary or not? Do you feel sure about using it, or do you not feel sure? So often, just like my mother's example with the feed story, so before this point, she was unsure about using the word feed in this situation. Like, can you give food to a child? Can you call that feeding a child? Like, we're gonna, like give food to a child in that way. But from that point, if I do a good job of making that clear, then now the person is sure. And so there's a specific moment, and you can actually feel that happen. But again, instead of thinking about a broader thing, try to look specifically at what the problem is, and usually you can find something specific like that. And when you find something specific, it's solvable. And this is actually one of the things I talk about at the beginning of the book, where we're not, like I had thought, I just kind of have a general lack of confidence about using my words. But the truth is, there's actually specific questions I have about how to use something, or, when you get into a conversation, you don't even know how it would work or whatever. There are lots of questions that appear like that. But you can actually prepare for those things in advance, and that's exactly what this video is talking about. So, Puedes says, hi, Drew, how are you? I'm doing all right. And Chrono again, do you teach your wife English as well? Well, I teach my wife, just like this feed example was an example of me teaching my wife English. And so when I'm, doing things like that at home, because I enjoy teaching, and especially wanting to make sure my children are learning the language, because they spend most of their time in Japanese, but their English is coming along very well too. But yeah, so I like to teach, and I like to see people when they have those aha moments. That's why I do what I do. But yeah, I do the same thing for lessons here, like on YouTube, the same thing I would do with my kids or family or whatever. Miyazaki again, sometimes I get frustrated when I don't understand a word. For example, I'm struggling a little bit with the word slack, even though you see examples in English. Then I realize it takes more time. Yeah, so this is an interesting question where, like, a good teacher is trying to make a connection, and this slack is like a good example of it. See if I can give an example with something here. But again, like you have a question in your mind. So this is like the learner over here, and you're unsure about a particular thing, and there's a word over here. We'll just put a little speech bubble there, where it's not even like, what does slack mean, for example? Like that could be your question you're thinking about, but the teacher's goal is to help you connect with something like that, if I can figure out exactly what the question you have is. It's like, is it a usability question, or is it a pronunciation question? And like the meaning is in there, but for example, let's say I can just use this right here. So I've got a headphone cable in front of me. It's a little bit tangled up right now. I don't want to mess this up. But so if I have, we can just imagine this one part of the wire here. If I pull it tight like that, you can see it's straight. So see that? Hopefully you can see that. Like I'm pulling it tight. But if I make it loose now, whoa, it's got some slack in it. So there's slack in the rope or the string or the wire. Oh, now it's tight. Now I'm going to slacken it a little bit to slacken the cable. So what I'm trying to do here is give you a use case of something that really helps you understand what something means. So rather than you just getting a bunch of examples where you hope maybe you will figure out something, we're trying to give you like an anchor, so something you can understand first. And so we look at a cable, and here we're trying to help you understand it by comparing tight versus slack. So tight, I'm holding it tightly, and now I've got some slack in it. And when you understand that, okay, so here's one use of slack that you can understand visually, and you can see the difference between like something that's held tightly and something that's got some slack in it. And so there's like the company slack, or you're talking about slack in like not working very hard at something. But typically words like this, you should try to understand them if you can in a physical way, because that will give you the core meaning, or at least help you understand something in a basic example. So Youglish is useful for, and I talk about this in the book, like getting a wide range of examples of people saying things, and it's most useful for, at least in my opinion, the naturally varied review of hearing different people use the word. So you will also see different examples of it, but often you can't really control what those examples are going to be. ChatGPT is a better example, or a better way to get specific examples, like what is a physical use of the word, what is a figurative use, and in the book I give a specific ChatGPT prompt that you can use to have it teach you things in that same way. But again, this idea, if we can compare something, excuse me, where we're going to compare like a tight string versus one that's got slack, then it becomes a bit easier to understand, like I'm kind of slacking at school, for example. So I could be working hard. So working hard at doing something would be, more like this kind of tight string or this tight wire over here. I'm actually working hard. But if I'm not working so hard, I'm kind of slacking a little bit. So you can see I'm not working as hard as I'm not really pulling hard. I'm not trying as hard as I could. I'm slacking at school. And so we talk about people slacking at work, and it just means they're not like pulling as hard as they should be. There's slack in their effort in that way. And so this is how we're trying to get those kinds of examples. You can get that from ChatGPT, but this is how we teach in Fluent for Life, and also in the book when I'm talking about giving yourself examples of naturally varied review. You could get that from English, like Youglish, or seeing that, for example, I talk about in the book also. If you're learning vocabulary, a good way to do that is with a Google image search. So you're actually seeing a bunch of different examples. In Frederick, the app, I do that the same way. So I give you multiple visual examples, and you can see that actually we call this, like there's actually this animation in the app. I don't think the word slack is in there, but you would still learn to spell something like that through those same rules. But again, this is what we're looking for. So you want to just not spend time by getting a bunch of different examples. It's more, what is the specific question you have about what something means? Or like you heard it maybe in some situation, but something is unclear. You're trying to get to that point where, okay, like we showed a minute ago about a general uncertainty versus a specific question about language or usage or something like that. But that will help you choose the right examples to help you understand something better. Let's see. What is the difference between ward off and stave off? Ward off and stave off. That's an interesting one. Yeah, it's you know what? Since I just explained all that about different usages, I will give you the same advice. So look for different examples of that. Like even ChatGPT would be able to tell you, like you will, for example, hear examples of ward, like for magic. That's a very common usage of that, like to ward off evil spirits, that kind of thing. And stave off hunger, you will hear like different examples. But rather than me just telling you that, if you look for a couple of different examples, you will notice a pattern, and that will help you understand the difference better. So give that a try first. MS Competition says, how can I get as many aha moments in lots of individual words as possible every day? Sometimes, especially if I'm in a flow state, it's really easy to learn words from different angles. And I can easily retain those words for a very long time because I learn them in a natural way, which is terribly important. Yeah, I would just stay with the connections. That's how you get the aha moments faster. So if you're learning a particular thing, like we just got the feed example, or Slack, or whatever the thing is, when you get an aha moment about it, keep it going. And that's exactly what I did when I'm giving the example to my wife and mother. So at the beginning of this video, if you didn't watch that, you should go back and watch it. But I'm telling the story of how my mother-in-law asks me if I can use the word feed when talking about giving food to children. And I said yes. And I could have just stopped right there. But my wife was there, and so I wanted to give a bit more of a lesson for her benefit. Maybe my mother can, or my mother-in-law can understand a little bit about that too. But my wife did not know about feeding like paper into a machine, or feeding a ticket into something, or something like that, feeding mail into a mail slot. So here I'm going deeper into the vocabulary, and that's just one example of that. But it's really about making connections with different things, and the more connections you make, this is how you can stay in that flow state of what do you learn, and then what questions does that naturally lead to for other things. And so that's how I would continue doing that if you don't have specific vocabulary you're trying to learn. But if you're just like, oh, that's interesting, and that led me to this and to that, and then suddenly you're learning a whole bunch of things, and all of these connections are getting stronger. And maybe you even end up coming back to the original thing. But it does happen that way for many people. But yeah, making connections, that's the idea. Misaki again says, then a day, I really admire you. Your book and live streamings are the best. Thanks a lot. I hope to get Frederick in the near future. Glad to hear it. Yeah, and I'm continuing to work on the book. I know people are waiting for that, but it's taken a long time because chapter 7 is basically the whole book in one chapter, in a weird way, because it's the conclusion of things. Chapter 8 is a bit lighter, but I think people will understand chapter 7 well because I have taken a lot of time with it. So it won't look like that. Hopefully you will see it and everything will flow very smoothly and people will get the ideas of it, but it should make a lot of sense. So really the question is, if I'm hyper-focused and locked in and making an effort to learn new words, the way you always explain in your YouTube videos, how many words can I learn on average? I mean, per day, and most importantly, how not to forget them ever. Yeah, so again, it just depends on what you're doing and how many connections you can try to make. So you don't have to force your brain to do this, but the more naturally varied review you get, the more connections you will see, because the whole point is you're looking for what are the patterns between these two different things. And so one of the things I talk about in the book is like what I do for learning Japanese. Because I don't have a Japanese teacher, I need to find a way to give myself good examples of naturally varied review. And I'm looking more for, rather than like Youglish examples of specific vocabulary, sometimes that's useful, but I'm more looking for how people describe certain things. So in the book, I describe the two ways of learning. So the first one is when you're going from particular words and phrases or pronunciation or grammar or whatever, and then you're trying to learn that and then see how it fits into real communication. But the other way is to do the opposite, where you begin with real communication and then see what fits into those examples. And I spend a lot more of my time doing that second kind of learning because it's teaching me a lot more than just the vocabulary or pronunciation or grammar. So I'm learning nuances or interesting like examples of how people might say things. Like, for example, I recently had the traditional Japanese New Year's, so that's where I spend the first day of January at, I don't know, my wife's uncle's place, and we have a lot of food, and everybody's sitting around talking. And so this is a whole day of me speaking Japanese with people, and it's a lot of fun where I'm kind of using different references and listening to them tell stories about things. And a lot of the improvement I'm getting is just paying attention to how other people talk about stuff. And so one of the things I do for this is just watching street interviews of Japanese people, and the same thing you can do in English, like English people or like Americans talking about whatever. And so there are lots of people who just interview a range of people for a video, and that's the whole video. And so they're giving you naturally varied review easily for free about a particular topic. And so you can see how different people will talk about something like, what do you think about Trump? Or what do you think about, I don't know, having a pet dog versus a cat, or, whatever the topic is. Or if you're looking for people describing a particular thing, like you can watch people talking about taking care of a house plant or something. So whatever that particular thing is, this information is now freely available for you to create those connections. And so if you're looking for more, you want to stay in that flow state, keep getting more examples of a particular thing until you feel pretty satisfied with it, and then look for something else that's related to that. So you could look for, I don't know what your particular interests are, but you follow that interest. And this is the exact same thing I talk about in the book, where this is not about like trying to memorize a particular list of stuff. It's just follow the interests and natural connections that you make as you become interested in things, or you want to know more about them. But as you do that, you will learn a lot more and improve faster. Let's see. So really, okay, I think I got that one. So I don't have like a number of words per day or whatever. It's just, you will get better at doing that as you try it more. While ChatGPT can explain such different uses as formal, casual, figurative, etc., guess what? Without doing speaking practice as much as most Uzbek English learners are doing, I'm progressing a whole faster using this very method of yours when it comes to learning new vocabulary. That's interesting. So the other person who's also Uzbek in this chat, you guys should talk with each other. But yes, and so this is the thing, and I talk about this a lot, and people don't believe me. So I began the video by talking about these two different comments I got on this same video. So this is my how to speak fluently about almost anything video, which remains very popular because people want to know how to speak fluently about almost anything. But what I say is that the key to that is actually not trying to speak more, it's just understanding the language better, which you can do on your own. If you don't have to wait for other people to speak with in order to improve, then that means you can actually improve a lot faster, just like you're doing, which is great. So yes, you don't have to wait for people. You don't have to study the typical way. You have permission. It's okay. That's the whole point of this video, to start 2026, really to remind people that you don't have to force yourself to speak in order to improve. You can do that if you want to, and certainly I want people to speak, but I think it's a lot easier for people if you spend more time understanding the language first and then speak after you feel ready, because why wouldn't you want to do that? I don't know if anybody would, argue about that, but let me see. I think, I don't know if you didn't read the comment before, the comments that begin with chat GPT can explain such different. Yeah, I think I read that. So your question is, I'm hyper-focused on making effort to learn new words the way you always explain. Yeah, and that's what I was just talking about. So if I missed something, you can let me know. But that's the basic idea. Look for connections and focus on things you are interested in, and the language will naturally grow from there. And an interesting thing also is that when you learn to talk about something really well, you will also see how to talk about other things, because that vocabulary becomes more useful, just like we showed with the feed example. So some learners might say, well, feed is just for talking about food. And I say, no, it's actually for talking about putting something into something else. I could feed marbles into a little, I don't know, something or whatever. Or I could feed a letter into a slot for a mailbox. But as you get to know the language better, you feel more confident about using it because you know you'll use it correctly and you have many more uses for it. The vocabulary becomes more valuable for that reason, and you don't have to wait for anybody. So I don't know why anyone would want to, but there still is a lot of social pressure to get out and speak. And so it was interesting to get those two comments on that same video around the same time. I'm actually watching your video about flipping the switch to speak confidently. Yeah, so that's the same idea. You flip this switch in your brain, what I call the fluent communication switch, when you feel sure about using something. And so it actually happens for individual words and phrases as you use them. And even within that, your brain, and I will talk about this more in chapter 7, but your brain is continuing to process information over time. So your brain doesn't stop when you learn something. It's still looking for more information all the time. That's why my wife knew the word feed already, but her brain got excited when I taught her some new uses of that same word. So she could actually feel like, oh, now the brain is feeling excited because it's understanding the word more deeply, it's giving more uses of it, it's becoming more valuable. All of that stuff gets your brain very excited. And again, you don't need another person there to do this with. You can get these examples anywhere. And if you're not doing this already and you don't have my book, I highly recommend it. People are enjoying it. I've not had anyone tell me the book was bad or that it didn't make sense or that they thought it was all incorrect or whatever. So far it's working well. Even without it being finished yet. But if you would like to get the book and start the new year with this different way without trying to force yourself to speak, and you don't have to wait for anyone to improve, you can improve today, spend as much time as you like and actually enjoy learning and make these connections and feel good about using the language. That's what you'll find in The Strangest Fluency Secret. So I'm working hard, getting it done. I will be spending more time writing today. But yeah, I'm glad people are enjoying it thus far. Let's see, and Teresa, if I'm pronouncing it, Teresa, says, hello, teacher, God bless you and your family. Well, thank you very much. And Mizek says, I love to read different versions of Aesop fables. That helps a lot. Yep, so that's another good example of naturally varied review. So I talk, I think I mentioned in the book about how I have 3 different versions of the Three Little Pigs in Japanese. So actually, like they're quite similar, but there are some differences. And I can even watch different versions on YouTube. I think I was talking with actually at the Oshogatsu. That's the New Year's Day event at my uncle-in-law's place. My wife's cousin has a not new, but he's like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old son. And so they read to him English children's books, which I said was a good idea. But I said, instead of you trying to pronounce it, if you don't feel confident about your pronunciation, just go to YouTube, and there are native English speakers reading children's books. You can find almost anything you want, and I talk about this also in my book about getting those different examples. So if you like the same Aesop fable for children or for adults, there's lots of different ways you could get that variation if you enjoy it. So find something you enjoy and get variation on it. That's the idea. And what I talk about in chapter 7, like the big reveal, I'll just share this with you very quickly before we end the video, but the variability, the unpredictability of real communication is really the main reason why my method works. And it also explains why people trying to memorize particular scripts or focus on particular vocabulary often have trouble in communication because they're learning these things that maybe get used in different ways or they don't get used at all. They could have different pronunciation or people express things in different ways, and people are just unprepared for real communication. That's where that communication gap, that preparation gap comes from. So if you're spending time learning, but real communication feels like a completely different environment, you're trying to jump from one to the other, and that's what creates a lot of the stress for people when they're learning. But if you can make these things basically next to each other by getting that variability before you speak, then you will be much more prepared in real communication. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, so I'm excited to finish that part of Chapter 7. Fan gives the thumbs up, and GPT is particularly good at explaining stuff, different uses, angles of one particular word. Yeah, and so that's another thing I mentioned in the book, where if you know that variability is a thing that you will encounter in real life, so if we know that different natives will speak differently, or they will have different pronunciations or different ways of describing the same thing, then we should mirror that in our learning. That's the idea. And so I kind of accidentally discovered this, and it's a weird thing. Like, most people continue to try to memorize scripts or prepare in that way when they will constantly meet the opposite in real life. So you will try to memorize a phrase or how somebody says something, like a textbook says it this way, but people in real life say it differently. So it makes sense. We want to make the actual preparation like, as much as possible, like the real thing. And so that's a particular thing that, it's weird. As I was learning for many years and still struggling to speak, I just never thought about that. But I make that point very clear in Chapter 7. That's the whole idea. Manuel says, good evening from Nicaragua. Input, listening, and reading are relatively easy for your mind to process, but output, speaking, and writing are not so easy for our mind to do. It's easy in the sense that you don't have to do anything, for sure, but the point about making that stuff easy or difficult is what I just described. So if you hear something but you don't understand it very well, that's not really like good input for you, or at least it's not enough input for you to feel sure about producing the output. So input and output can be both very easy to do, but it just depends on the kinds of input and output you get. So a lot of people talk about comprehensible input, which is correct, but that kind of gets you thinking about, like, I should just get a lot of input. But what we're actually looking for is certainty. We want to feel sure. We want to get our questions answered so that the output becomes a natural, easy thing to do. So it shouldn't feel like learning is easy, but speaking is difficult. They should both feel smooth and easy for you. And so if speaking does not feel easy, it's because the learning, the input part, is not actually answering your questions. And so for most people, that's the experience. And people just have lots of beliefs about how language learning should be, with like it should be difficult. And, I was in the library today spending 20 hours memorizing a list of phrases or whatever. And like people, that's like important stuff for people. Even if they didn't really become a better speaker, they can feel good about making the effort. But I'm saying you should be able to make the effort and improve, and feel if you're making improvement or not by whether you can speak. So the people I help actually want to speak. They're not just trying to learn things and memorize them for a test, although my method will help those people as well. But for the most part, people watching my videos or reading my book, they want to speak, but they feel like, my vocabulary is kind of increasing, I understand more, but why am I not speaking well? And it's usually because they still have questions about the things they want to say. So get those questions answered. That's really the thing. It's not because they lack speaking practice. They just, even if they have opportunities to speak, they're still not speaking anyway. So the speaking practice is not the problem. It's just, if you get input that doesn't help you understand something, that doesn't answer your questions and make you feel sure, then of course it will be more difficult to speak. But it's not really like, input should be so much easier than output. It's just most people, that is their experience. They don't feel good about speaking because the input is not very good. So yes, it is easy to just sit back and, watch a video or read something or whatever, and producing stuff is more difficult. Just like, I can watch somebody else build a stack of blocks, but when I do it, I have to use some kind of effort to do that. That's true, but the bigger problem is not the effort. It's most people actually don't feel sure about the effort they are making. So they're trying all this stuff, they're working hard, but they're not feeling improvement. They're not seeing results in their speaking because they don't actually feel sure about their words when they try to speak. So don't worry about like input versus output. It's just, are your questions getting answered or not? And so what I talk about in the book is the solution for that. So you don't need to wait for anybody. You don't have to like find a speaking partner or even do a lot of the typical review things that most people think they need to do. It's really just getting your questions answered. That's the idea. Let's see, and then Than says, so the key is making sure we really understand what we're learning. However, too many inputs make me feel confused and makes my word choice when I'm talking. Well, all right. It's not about just getting a whole bunch of input. It's getting your question answered. So in my example, like when somebody asked me about the word slack, like I don't want to give 20 different example sentences of it. I just want to show them what it looks like. So in this case, because I can answer that question by just demonstrating something, when someone says, what does slack mean? I can show them. And then we can build on that understanding with more examples, but I'm trying to do this as quickly and as simply as possible. So if we have a cable like this, I pull it tight. Now this is tight, or you can call it taut, like T-A-U-G-H-T, it's taut. But now if I relax, now I've got some slack in here. Okay, so I'm just giving an example, and the point is to help people feel sure about it, not just by getting a bunch of examples. The point is to answer your questions. And if you can get your question answered with one example, then great, that's fine. But again, it's just however many examples you need, and sometimes a combination of examples is what helps you understand something. But again, don't feel like you're trying to overwhelm your brain with lots of information. You want to be smart about how you do it. And of course, if you don't have anyone to do it with, sometimes you need to experiment or try different things. When you have someone like me that can help you do that, like what we do in Fluent for Life, that's why people join that program, because they actually just want me to set those examples up for them so it's really easy for them to understand everything. That's how you get lots of aha moments like all day, every day, because I'm doing the work for you of setting all that up. But again, the point is not to just get lots of examples, it's to just get your questions answered. And so Manuel says, thanks, then all depends on the method we use. Well, it's like, I don't want to get people thinking about a particular method, because like here in this Slack example, I'm showing you something visually. If I tell you something and I'm just letting you listen, like that method would be inappropriate, or the better way to say it is it's not as good as just seeing a contrast, like something tight versus slack over here. So now there is slack in the cable. Now the cable is tight. All right, I'm pulling it tightly. There's no slack. So slack, no slack. Slack, no slack. Now from there, if you still are curious about other uses of the word, now we can get into more figurative or whatever other uses of it like that. But my goal is not just to give you a bunch of examples and like overwhelm your brain with so much. I'm trying to be surgical, precise, specific, so that you can understand things easily and as quickly as possible. Again, that's the benefit of having someone who can actually help you do that. But yeah, it's not so much about like a method, it's just getting the questions answered. That's the important thing. I don't understand why some of my comments are getting deleted by accident. No idea. I haven't touched any of the comments. So we don't need to know a bunch of words that the same meaning. Well, it's just think about the questions you have or don't have. If you don't care, like I don't need to know 10 different ways to describe my hand or whatever. Like maybe it's useful for hearing some other variation from other people, but I will probably just say hand, Like I could, use something else, whatever. But again, like the point is not just to learn a bunch of different examples of how to do something. That's nice, but think about it more as getting your questions answered. And so you will naturally see patterns develop for what you can learn, but what all other people are also using in their conversations. Like if you're watching a movie and you notice a lot of people describing something in a particular way, then that's probably a good thing for you to learn as well. But if no one else says something, then you probably don't need to learn it either, or maybe you don't care. It's up to you. But try not to think about it as a particular method or doing things like that. It's just getting your questions answered. So as you're learning this way, begin with things you want to say but cannot. So if you're in a conversation and you notice, like how do I describe this? I don't know how to say that. So I should probably watch some other people on YouTube talking about that. So if I'm wondering how do I check into a hotel, or how do I talk about washing my dog or tying my shoes or baking cookies or whatever, you can find content examples about all of this stuff. And then even before you speak, watch a couple of different examples of that and see how people describe those things. So this is what I mentioned before in my video about espresso. So if you want to see an example of how this works, this is me not knowing anything about how to make espresso, but I watch 4 different videos of other people making this, and I learn a whole bunch. Like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm getting all these aha moments about how I might describe making coffee or espresso specifically, and you can get as specific as you like. But then if I learn about that specific thing, maybe I can also learn how to make, I don't know, some different kind of drink, or if I'm making drinks at a bar or something like that. All of these things let you choose what you're interested in. And so if you don't know how to talk about something, you can find other people who are talking about it and see those examples. And this is exactly how you got fluent in your native language. You saw other people talking about things, and that showed you examples of what you should do. Like when people say hello, when they greet each other. As a child, you see the same thing. Like, okay, people use this word when they're meeting each other or they see each other at this time of day. When it's in the evening, they say good evening. And so children make that connection. They understand that pattern. Maybe a child will actually have a parent just say, look, like in the afternoon, we say hello or good afternoon. But in the evening, we say good evening. And before you go to bed, we say good night. So even if you don't get a lesson like that of someone telling you exactly what's happening, over time, the child learns those patterns, and that's how you got fluent in your native language. What we're trying to do as non-native learners is mimic that, but be it in a more efficient way. So that way, I don't have time to like wait for a bunch of random input. I want specific, surgical, I want to know like exactly, okay, I want to talk about this thing. I know today I'm going to be talking about baking cookies or something. So before I go talking about baking cookies, I should watch some YouTube videos about baking cookies. The information is already there. So I will be well prepared and see when people talk about specific pieces of baking or generally baking or different kinds of cookies or whatever the thing is. But I will be much more prepared before that. So what I'm trying to do is answer my questions. My brain will have questions like, how do you talk about this? And how do you describe that or whatever? And if I give that information to my brain, I will feel confident about doing that before I speak. That's the whole point. All right. And of course, this video goes longer than an hour. All right. Let's see here. I don't understand when people blend words. Yeah, so that's again another thing, like if you first understand the words, then you start seeing examples of how people blend those and you pay attention for that. My app, Frederick, will be a good example, Frederick. If you do not have the app already, it will show you how to do this. It will teach you the individual sounds, but show you how those blend together in sentences, and you can learn this, again, the same way a native would. So if you have trouble listening to other people, this is a very good way to do that. But you can also, again, find different examples of people saying things, and the book is describing all these different ways that you can improve in that way. Hi, instructor, where can I buy your full course, 0 to Hero, to become a fluent guy in English? Just click on the link in the description. So the first link is for the book, second link is for Fluent for Life, and the third link is for Frederick, I think. Yeah, it should be. But also, I recommend anybody who's interested in Fluent for Life should read the book first, because it really shows you why it works. I've spent many years trying to explain to people why this works, but a lot of people, they're not interested in joining a video course because they assume I need to speak at some point to actually get fluent. So maybe Drew can teach me a bunch of stuff, but I still need to have some kind of speaking practice. So they think a video course, and not like me specifically, but learning through video, it needs to have some kind of talking practice with it. But what people discover is that you get into the program and it just answers your questions. And if you already feel sure about using things, there's not really a lot to practice. You just start speaking when you get into actual conversations. And if the program does not answer any questions for you, you just ask us and we're here to answer them. The whole point is to answer any questions you have that stop you from speaking. And over time, you naturally become a better speaker, because why wouldn't you? If your questions are disappearing, you will speak better, by definition, because it's the questions that stop you from speaking. Let's see. So I knew about the word slack because of the to cut someone some slack, which it's don't be so harsh on me. I'm not in the best at this moment to deliver the expected results. Yeah. So what happened, and this is also something I talk about in the book, is people will often get a figurative use of something in a conversation or from a movie and then not know how that's built up. So when I'm talking about giving an example, we've got our wire here and I've got it tight or taut, and now I've got it slack. So there's slack in it. So when I talk about giving someone some slack, it's I'm trying to relax. Imagine I'm walking with someone and I'm pulling them very tightly. So this is me over here and I'm pulling someone along and moving like that. I've got, you imagine holding a dog leash very tightly like that. So the dog, let's say I hold it, I'm standing here and the dog is over here, and I'm pulling the dog, and the dog doesn't have any slack. So the dog is kind of it can't move. So what I want to do is give the dog some slack. Okay? So I want to give the dog a little bit more freedom of movement. I'm giving the dog some slack. So in the same way, that's where we finally get to the understanding of to cut someone some slack. So I'm actually giving them more room to move around. So instead of trying to control something very tightly, we give it some slack. Okay? So that's what that means. And that's why, again, it's more difficult when I teach something, I want to show people the examples that are going to build the understanding up from simple to more complex. But when you're learning by yourself, often you will get an example that begins at the higher level, and so you should be trying to work a little bit down to maybe understand the basic meaning of something like that. And why would we say that? Because the adult mind especially is trying to understand why. We want to know why. We're kind of kids in that way, but why does it work that way? And so when you see, okay, I'm walking a dog and I hold the leash too tightly, the dog it can't move around very well. It's feeling very tense. So I want to give the dog some slack. I want to put some slack in the line to make it a little bit more loose and relaxed. And so we now can use that same idea in a conversational way. And you can see this is exactly what I'm doing with the feed example. So we begin with something very simple, very practical, like feeding food into somebody's mouth. And everybody, for the most part, watching this video will know that example, just like my wife knew that already. But she did not know how we can do feeding an envelope, into a mailbox or something like that, or feeding a ticket into a machine. And so in those examples now, the brain, you get the aha moment. You feel okay, I started with something simple. Now I can see how people would use it in a more interesting way. And that's often when people are speaking to each other in a conversational way. We know the more difficult ways of expressing stuff, but typically we also learned the more basic ones too when we were younger. So people learn about like slack in a rope versus, being, tight, something like that, or put some slack in a dog leash. But now, again, you get to the more figurative use of that. So if you start at something figurative and you don't understand what it means, get ChatGPT to help you with that and just say, hey, I'm kind of at a higher level here. Can you walk me down the staircase to a more basic example of that? So this is, again, why I teach, or why I teach the way I teach, is because I want to start people off with the staircase. I mean, that makes sense. You don't want to just start someone at the top. You want to help them walk up easily. But if you start up there just by hearing something from a movie, try to get back down to the first and then walk back up. All right, let's see. And then Dan says, your words are very valuable for me. Glad to hear it. I should buy the book as well. Just click on the link in the description below. So the book is it's taken me 20 years to be able to explain what I do, even though it's very simple. It seems like a complicated thing, but the problem is not really the learning, it's just the beliefs that people have about learning that actually stop them from making improvement. Because if you believe that you need to have people to speak with in order to improve, and you don't have anyone to speak with, or it's very rare, you don't have many chances, then you feel stuck. But when you see that, oh, I can actually improve, like this is a perfect example. Like you learn feed, here's a basic example, a basic usage. Now we can go to something more difficult using the same word. You get that aha moment and you realize, oh, I actually improved before I said anything. So without saying anything, now I understand the word better. I can do that with really any word, because what would stop you from doing that? And so you don't have to wait to improve. You can actually feel more confident about doing that. That's why I wanted to start this video, and it was kind of an interesting thing about getting those same two comments. One person said, you have to speak to get fluent. The other person said, I'm really glad you showed me that I don't have to do that. So people don't feel like they have permission to do that. So that's why I'm starting the video this way. Hopefully that will be a good start for anybody that's trying to do that. But if you'd like to see exactly how to do that, the book will show you how. Fluent for Life is the program that actually does it for you. And of course, we're here to answer any additional questions you have. And Mizaki, I'm glad you're in the program. It's great to have you there. Let's see. And Gabriel says, to learn English, I started a method which I put some phrasal verbs, and then I have to create a text with that phrasal verb. Is it a good way to learn to speak? Try to think about it this way. If you're asking me if something is a good way to do it, what you should be asking is, does it answer your questions? So if you're trying something and again, the same thing with this, I keep coming back to this Slack example because it's a good example of learning something visually, or you could hear something, or you could write it down, or whatever. Sometimes hearing something is the best thing to do. Sometimes writing something, or sometimes seeing it happen is the best way to learn it. It just depends. So if you're trying to use phrasal verbs and learn how they work, and that's the goal because you want to know how to use phrasal verbs, watch my series here on YouTube about that. Just look for the visual guide to phrasal verbs. You can see, I have, I think, 2 samples of that program, but you can see how it works. And so there are some examples where you're learning sentences, but it's really about comparing these different uses of phrasal verbs. Because for me, what I'm trying to do is help you understand how these different verbs work by comparing them. It's the comparison of these things that really helps. And so if you're just learning a phrasal verb and then trying to put it in a story, is your brain getting the answer it needs to the question? So if the brain doesn't first understand what a phrasal verb means, then hearing it in a story may or may not be helpful. Or maybe you're just doing more work than you need to. So try to think about it that way. What are you trying to do? So if you're trying to learn phrasal verbs, or you just want to make stories or whatever, I don't know what exactly the goal is, but think about what that goal is, and then is the goal being, whatever the thing is, are your questions being answered? So do you feel more sure about speaking or using something by following a certain method? And remember that a method might be good for a particular thing, but not good for something else. So if I want you to try some food, I don't want to just describe it and tell you what it tastes like. I want you to taste it. That's the way you get the answer. So you don't get the answer by me describing it. You taste the food. That's how you know the reality of what the thing is. And so again, try to think about it like what is the goal that you have for your learning? Are you trying to understand something better, or you want to know how to use it well, or whatever? You're trying to compare different things. Let's see. So thanks for your recommendation, Mizaki. I'm going to buy it right now. Well, yeah, I'd love to see more people in the program. But again, I do recommend people get the book first if they'd really like to understand. If you've already seen lots of my videos and you already know I can help you, then go ahead and get in the program. We have lots of people that have been joining the program for years, even before the book was out. But I really thought it was useful to have that because especially like even having access to AI, a lot of people don't know how to use AI well, and even like programs that use AI are still doing a lot of the same typical teaching methods. And unless you control ChatGPT in a way that actually teaches you, it will typically just give you more examples and try to teach you through translations and give you the typical stuff that you will find anywhere else. And so for many, many years, there really hasn't been much innovation in language teaching. It's just innovation in where the teaching is done, like on like mais, or whatever what do you call it, like the particular thing you're interested in doing. It's probably not going to give you as good of a result unless you can control what it does. So even me, if I'm trying to learn something with ChatGPT, I have to spend some time working with it to make sure it gives me the best results I'm looking for. Let's see. I have some struggles about verb on, in, at. Yeah, so that's another example with phrasal verb. For example, depend on why cannot be depend at, depend in, or other examples like this. Yeah, so this is an example typically for people who have spent a lot of time learning through translations. And so like if your language maybe has a different way of doing that, it looks like you are, maybe that's Korean. But if you learn it in English, and again, like learning about like depend in, depend on, or whatever, those are the kinds of things that are higher level, where if you first understand the prepositions with phrasal verbs or even more basic examples, then it becomes a lot easier to depend on someone rather than to depend in someone, which would not make sense. But if you don't understand why that would not make sense, then it's better to get the more basic examples first. So when people don't understand something higher level, try to go back to something more basic. So if you're learning like with ChatGPT or whatever, what you should be doing is asking for like, hey, what are some more basic ways to understand this? And then ask ChatGPT for some contrasts. Like, why would you say depend on versus depend in? But again, even before you get that, I recommend you just get more basic examples. But you can see different examples of this right on my YouTube channel. So search for phrasal verbs and search for prepositions, and you will see how I teach this. And these are the kinds of things also we cover both in the book, but also in Fluent for Life. That's where we really go through a lot of that stuff. But you can see all of that on the YouTube channel. My goal is to be able to speak, to be capable to produce my own speech. So you would say speech, yeah. And you know, most of the people who watch my channel, that is their goal. Like, they don't want to just learn English. They want to actually be able to express themselves and express themselves well. That's the idea. And so if you feel sure about your words, then you will speak. So that's kind of the thing. Like people are here, and they want to be over here. Like, I want to speak. This is the goal over here. But if you try to jump directly to speaking, it's usually quite difficult for people because you don't actually feel sure about your words. But if you take steps to get there and you feel sure about the vocabulary first, the speaking becomes the easy part, because now you don't have any questions about what you want to say. And it's those questions that stop you from speaking. So to prove this to yourself, just think about it, like try to say something, think about something you would want to say, or think about a conversation you tried to have and you couldn't express something, and you think, oh, like, How do I say that? Or is this word appropriate for the situation? If you have questions like that, or you're not sure what words you could use, that means you're unable to speak. So instead of trying to just speak more, get the questions answered, and that's it. So hopefully, as a good stopping point for people, let's see if any other questions. Let's see, sir, is that fixed expression, or is there a reason behind it? A fixed expression, sir, is that fixed expression, or is there a reason behind it? What do you mean? Are you asking about me, like something I said? Well, I'm more trying to get you to understand how to learn these things. And so number one, you want to learn them in English. And number two, you want to begin with basic things, make sure you understand it in English, and then move up to more complicated things. So if you're learning something like depend on versus depend in, you're using your native language to try to think about which preposition would be correct. Or if you're not translating, you're trying to think about the words as like kind of two pieces that don't really have any connection to each other. And then you're trying to guess which one might be correct instead of actually understanding which is the correct one. And so when you begin with what I'm talking about, learning in English, understanding it all in English at a basic level, and then moving up to more difficult examples like depend on versus depend in something, you'll see why it works, and you'll understand, and you will feel confident about using it. So I'm not trying to give you specific phrases to memorize or anything. This is more a way of learning. And that's why I talk like, usually my YouTube videos, I will give some examples of vocabulary just to show that it is possible to understand something better and then feel confident about using it. But most of my videos are trying to help people understand this way of learning, because the typical way is usually more difficult and frustrating for people because they don't know something very well, and they try to go to using it, and that's where they struggle. So there is a preparation gap here. And if you can make these two things closer together by getting a lot more examples and feeling sure about your words before you use them, then you will be having much more enjoyable conversations. We'll just say it that way. You'll be able to understand things and speak a lot better. Sergey says, the audio diary method involves recording daily monologues in English and analyzing them to track progress and identify systematic errors. Okay. Again, like people will have various, methods or whatever that they want to use, and that's fine. Like if something is working for you, then continue doing it. But remember, the question is just, is it giving you the answers you need? And many things can teach you, but maybe still leave you with questions, and that's what stops you from speaking. So if something is working for you, great. Like I would not tell people to do something like that just because it sounds like something a lot of people would not continue. Maybe there's an easy way to do it, but for me, I found that there are just easier ways for people to get their questions answered. So sometimes I don't know how to create a text. And I ask in ChatGPT, I don't know how to create my own speech. Yeah, then start with something basic. You don't worry about having long conversations. Just worry about getting the language at a basic level clear. Make sure you understand things, and then you can start building up to more difficult things. That's exactly what I did in Japanese. So I wasn't trying at first to have long conversations because that just wasn't possible for me to do. But I could recognize patterns and start learning to explain things better. And this is the story I tell in the book, and show how it's actually possible to do that. So you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to make things more difficult for yourself. Start at a level that's easier and get those questions answered. Feel sure about using the words, and then the speaking will follow naturally. That's how it works. So yeah, if you understand when you speak, but you have trouble creating your own speech, it means you still have questions about what you want to say. Read the book. Get the book. I wrote it for you. I wrote it for all of you guys. It's not for me. I already know the information, but for all the people who are still trying to do lots of things and they're still not feeling more confident about speaking, that's the issue. You still have questions that stop you from expressing yourself. That's it. So get those questions answered, and the speaking unlocks naturally, I should say. Thanks, sir. So in short, I should have to understand until I feel sure to use it. Yeah, and it doesn't take a long time if you get good examples, but that's the idea. Read the book. You should just get the book. And so, like, I want to give people a kind of long story short message here, but it's just getting your questions answered. So this is not get 100 examples and maybe feel good about it. It's maybe one example or one story or whatever is helpful for you. But get those questions answered. And if you don't have, if you don't feel sure when you're speaking, then you won't speak. That's why people can understand, but they can't respond back because they're like, wait a minute, how do I say this? How can I use this word or not? They don't feel sure because they have questions about what they want to say. Get the questions answered and you will speak. That's the idea. So if you'd like to see exactly how this works and why it works and everything, get the book. It will show you exactly. It leads you through the whole process. All right. But I did not expect to be going to 100 minutes here for the first video of 2026, but welcome. Hopefully everybody is starting their year off well. Again, I'm here to help people speak, and I've been doing this for over 20 years because I like when people, especially even if I can't see you understand something, I know when it happens. Like I'm good at what I do, so I know when it's happening. And I especially love to hear stories about how they're learning faster and able to speak better. And every time I hear those, I know, okay, it's happening for people out there too. And I like to see that. Anyway, that's what I do. And if I can make it easier for you, let me know. But that's why I'm here. Anyway, have a fantastic day. You can click on all of the links. We got one more question. Why do we always translate English to our native language and how to fix that? Get the book. Get the book. Get the book. Get the book. And it will explain all of this. So if you want to know like questions about learning itself, that's why I wrote the book. So it shows you why people have those issues. It shows you how to solve those issues. And it really becomes very easy, but it's more of like a change in thinking about that. So a lot of people are still trying to learn English through their native language because the lessons are not understandable. That's the idea. So I'm not trying to be lazy here. It's just I don't need to repeat myself because I already explained this perfectly and pretty much perfectly. Nobody has told me it's been a bad explanation so far. So hopefully people continue to enjoy it. But I spent 20 years thinking about all this stuff and now finally put it in a book so that people don't have to wait for me to explain it. It's just it leads you through this exactly. The reason people learn through translations is because it's a faster way to give you information to memorize for tests. And so you can learn something very quickly. Here's the Korean, here's the Japanese, here's the English, whatever. And I'm just going to try to remember something very quickly for a test. But when I get into a conversation, because I translate when I learn, I will translate when I speak. So that's why people do it. But again, the reason people translate is because they don't know how to make a language understandable in the language. Now, if you think about it, like if you are Korean, making sure I understand that, but it doesn't matter what language you speak. If you think about Korean children, they don't learn Korean from Chinese or from Japanese or from Thai or any other language. They learn Korean in Korean, and that's how they're able to speak. And you can do the same thing in English, and that's what I show you how to do in the book. So if you want to not translate when you speak, you have to learn English in English. And it's easy to do that when you see how the whole process works. It's actually very simple. But most people are kind of nervous about learning English in English because they're like, wait, I still need the translation. But the translation isn't helping them anyway. And so, they're kind of holding on to something that's not really helping them. But it's really because most lessons are not making the language understandable. If you don't understand what you learn, then you have questions about it, and that's what stops you from speaking. So I have a whole section about this in the book about why it happens and how to fix it, and it does all that for you. So if you're curious about how this works and you're tired of me just saying the same thing and you'd like to have a really good explanation of it, get the book. So you find that in the description right below this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the book. If you have any questions, you can also let me know. But have a fantastic start to 2026. I think, look at that, we got everybody. Thank you. And Manuel says have a blessed new year. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.